What's poppin', people? What's poppin'? WNBA star Brittney Griner is in the news once again, but this time for something completely different. Not too long ago, a group of Republican politicians from the state of Louisiana decided to hold a meeting and create a resolution to condemn President Joe Biden for allegedly choosing Brittney Griner over Paul Whelan for a prisoner swap in exchange for Russian arms dealer Victor Bout, who was serving Lord knows how many years in the U.S. prison. Now, when I saw that, I laughed my ass off, right? Because it's obvious that these Republican politicians did not do their research. Because if they've done their research, they would know that Joe Biden initially attempted to try to get Paul Whelan out of that Russian prison in exchange for a prisoner swap. But it's just that Paul Whelan is viewed by the Russian government to be a threat to the country's national security, as he was accused of committing espionage against the country, right? In which, in comparison to Brittney Griner, although what she's done, she was caught with marijuana or in other words, marijuana related products, although a crime in Russia, but it's not viewed as a threat to Russia's national security. So, of course, it was way easier for the United States government to negotiate on a deal to free Brittney Griner than it was to free Paul Whelan. But according to these Louisiana Republicans, that's not the case. Because if you read this article right here, I'm going to post the link to this article in the video description box underneath. I'm not going to read the article. I'm just going to give my opinion in this video. When you look at the verbiage that these Louisiana Republicans allegedly used in their resolution, they allege that Joe Biden chose a woke gay person to do a prisoner swap with than ex-Marine Paul Whelan. So when I read, when they use the words woke gay person, what these Louisiana Republicans really meant was a gay nigga. They use woke as Norse code to replace the word nigga, being that in today's society, in the United States of America specifically, it's no longer politically correct for Caucasians to publicly use the word nigga, because being that racism is more hidden in today's society than it was yesteryear. So therefore, of course, for racists to hide their racism, they must use new words in order to cover up racial epithets that they really want to use real bad. So woke is one of them. It's just like how you got racists who would call certain so-called black people thugs. In the context when undercover racists utilize the word thug to label black males, they really meant nigga. But once again, it's no longer politically correct for undercover racists to openly use the word nigga. So therefore, they must use other words, just like the word woke. What people forget to mention is that another factor why Brittney Griner was able to get out of Russian prison faster than Paul Whelan, we got to look upon the celebrity status of Brittney Griner. Brittney Griner is a popular public figure, especially in the United States of America, being that she's a professional athlete. So therefore, her fame and a person of that caliber of fame being held in prison is going to create a lot more attention worldwide, which in turn put even more pressure on the American government to do what it takes to free this person. And unfortunately, that's what celebrity status does. See, because like I said in one of my previous videos pertaining to Brittney Griner, people, especially American people, care more for their celebrities than their own goddamn children. Okay? That's how much on a pedestal celebrities are on. So when someone of a celebrity status is in this type of predicament, it'll be way more media attention placed on that, which would in turn cause much more pressure for politicians to do what it takes to free this celebrity out of this certain position or certain predicament, right? And let me also cover another thing, because you have a lot, not only these dumbass Louisiana Republicans, according to this article, was making this claim, but you have a lot of other people, especially online, who, you know, they were disgusted when they first heard the news of Brittney Griner being freed from prison in Russia. And they made stupid ass statements like, oh, so you're going to choose a basketball player over this ex-US Marine, you know, and trying to make it seem as if Paul Whelan was some decorated war hero or something. And when I hear that, right, when I hear that type of statement, once again, I realize that this is people who don't do deep research. Because if you did your research on Paul Whelan, right, you would recognize that Paul Whelan is no angel himself. I mean, he's very suspicious. He's a very suspicious character when you do your research on him. First and foremost, people who utilize that argument need to stop trying to make Paul Whelan as if he's some war hero, because this motherfucker got kicked out of the Marines. Yeah, Paul Whelan was court-martialed and kicked out of the military due to a bad conduct discharge, BCD. And a bad conduct discharge is almost as bad as a dishonorable discharge. Almost as bad. And do you know why he was court-martialed and kicked out of Marines? He was stealing social security numbers of other members of the military and forging fake paychecks. Right? In 2008, the military court-martialed him because of that. This is the official document from the United States military. Right? Agreeing to the bad conduct discharge that they gave to Paul Whelan. I'm going to post a link to this document in the video description box underneath. Yeah, man. And not only that, once again, when you do deeper research on why Paul Whelan was arrested, you will see that there's something fishy about that motherfucker. In which you cannot really be mad at the Russian government to accuse him of committing espionage. For one, he went into Russia carrying $80,000 in cash. $80,000 US in cold hard cash. Now, some idiot might say, well, Wacky, there's nothing wrong with someone carrying cash. When people carry that much cash, a lot of times they do that with the intention to pay someone under the table so they won't be any paper trail. You know? Now, according to different sources, at the time of Paul Whelan's arrest, he was going to Russia to partake in a wedding of one of his friends. One of his friends was getting married in Russia to some Russian female, and he was invited to go there. Not only was he invited to the wedding, but he was also invited as a chaperone for all the other Americans who was invited in the wedding, because Paul Whelan, who visited Russia multiple times prior to this wedding invitation, is well informed about the country. Therefore, he was, used as a chaperone to chaperone all the other American tourists to show them, around Russia, give them a great time, what have you. And in his hotel, the police who knocked down his hotel room door caught Paul Whelan with a thumb drive in his pocket. And the thumb drive had information on people working for the Russian military, which the Russians considered to be classified. That he claimed that basically a member of the Russian government that he's friends with gave him the thumb drive, but he thought that it was just pictures of friends that was on vacation, stuff like that, which to me, I find that to be funny, because why would you accept, a person giving you a thumb drive or a flash drive and you not knowing what the hell's inside of that flash drive? But on the flip side, though, there's other sources in which Paul Whelan alleged that a member of the Russian police who swooped in and knocked down the doors of his hotel planted that flash drive inside of his pocket. So now what you have is a contradicting story concerning the flash drive that was found in Whelan's pocket that, according to the Russian government, had secret information on members of the Russian government. Right? You had contradicting stories, on the part of Paul Whelan. First, he claimed that somebody gave it to him, that a friend of his gave him the thumb drive, not knowing what was inside of it. Then he claimed that the police planted it inside of his pocket. Which one's what? So already there's a lack of consistency in that story. Right? Not only that, but once again, there's a flash drive in his pocket containing what the Russian government considered to be top secret information upon members of the Russian government. Not only that, like I said before, he was caught with $80,000 in cash in his pocket, which the Russian government confiscated from him. What are you doing going, taking trips to different countries carrying $80,000 in cash? Unless if you're paying someone for something that's considered very valuable to you, and you don't want a paper trail to follow a transaction, so you chose to carry cold hard cash. Maybe. I'm not saying that's definitely the case. I'm saying maybe. And not only that, there's other sources. There's a BBC source that alleged that while Paul Whelan was in the wedding reception with his friends, he bragged about knowing certain information of people within the Russian government. So he bragged about knowing these information. So these things possibly led to Russia looking at Paul Whelan as a spy, thus serving 16 years in prison for espionage. So it's funny, going back to the whole Brittney Griner case and people crying about Brittney Griner being chosen over Paul Whelan to do that prisoner swap with that, with Victor Boot. When people make that argument, they seldom mention the history of Paul Whelan and trying to make it seem as if Whelan is just this innocent, all-American war hero. When the United States military don't even consider his ass to be a hero because he got a BCD, a bad conduct discharge from the military. Got court-martialed and kicked the fuck out for stealing or committing fraud or grand larceny. And then he's in Russia carrying a flash drive of information about, certain members that work within the Russian government. And him having conflicting stories behind that. So if we're going to speak about this situation, let's be objective and let's be balanced. And let's not leave out, certain details. All right. But when it comes to the case of Paul Whelan, the factors I just gave you are reasons why the Russian government is handling Paul Whelan's situation much more differently than they handled Brittney Griner's situation. Because once again, Brittney Griner, what she did, although it was considered illegal, but it's not considered a threat to the country's national security. But what Paul Whelan was caught with that flash drive is viewed to be a threat to Russia's national security. Which is why it was way easier for the United States government to negotiate with Russia to get Brittney Griner on a prisoner swap than it was for Paul Whelan. Okay? And some people even go as far as to say that because that due to Brittney Griner being a female, therefore she was chosen over Paul Whelan in a prisoner swap. Right? When, once again, if you do your research, you will see that that theory is not true. Because if you do your research, you would have known of a person named Trevor Reed. Trevor Reed was an American citizen who was in Russia and accused of assaulting a police officer in that country. Thus, he served a few years in prison. I'm going to post some articles on Trevor Reed in the video description box underneath. Trevor Reed was a Caucasian male, as far as I know, is not a member of the LGBT community, as far as I know. Once again, as far as I know, is not woke. But yet, this heterosexual Caucasian male was able to successfully be involved in a prisoner swap and chose over Paul Whelan to now be free. So for people to assume that Brittney Griner's race or her sexual orientation or her gender was the factor why the United States chose her in a prison swap over Paul Whelan, then can somebody ask me a question that why was a heterosexual Caucasian male by the name of Trevor Reed also chosen over Paul Whelan to do a prison swap in April of 2022? Once again, the United States it was much more easier for the United States to engage in a prisoner swap for Trevor Reed because what Trevor Reed did, although a crime, but is not viewed by the Russian government to be a threat to their national security. The Russian government is viewed and have viewed Paul Whelan's situation much more differently than both Brittney Griner and Trevor Reed's situation, thus making it easier for the United States government to negotiate a prisoner swap for both of these individuals. And if you motherfuckers have done your research, you would know that. Brittney Griner's successful prison swap, which freed her in December of 2022, had nothing to do with her sexual orientation. It had nothing to do with her race. It had nothing to do with her gender. It had a lot to do with her celebrity status and the severity of the crime that she was committed or that she was accused of committing. In which Paul Whelan's crime is viewed to be much more severe. And Russia view Paul Whelan to be much more of a threat to their country's national security, thus view it to be much more dangerous to release Paul Whelan after just spending 4 years in prison. This is why it's harder for the United States government to do a prison swap for Paul Whelan. But these dumb-ass Louisiana Republicans seem to not realize that. I mean, damn. Shout outs to all my brothers and sisters that's Republicans, but the thing is, you have a lot of these politicians who claim to be involved in the same party as you, who's making y'all look bad. Because them motherfuckers are stupid.